AITA for cutting off my parents after proof they drained my wedding fund? My name is Madison, I am 29, and I work as a claims adjuster for an auto insurance company in Columbus, Ohio. This means I spend most of my day listening to people explain how a mailbox came out of nowhere. I rent a small one-bedroom apartment with beige carpet, a radiator that clanks like it is trying to send a message, and a kitchen so small I have to choose between opening the toaster or having counter space. I meal prep on Sundays. I keep a color-coded budget spreadsheet that my friends make fun of until they need help figuring out where their paycheck went. My idea of reckless spending is buying name-brand coffee creamer without checking if it is on sale. My fiancé, Graham, used to say my spreadsheet looked like it had been designed by a very anxious accountant. He was not wrong. Graham is 31, calm in a way that used to make me suspicious, and the kind of person who asks, "What do you need?" instead of "What did you do?" when something goes wrong. He proposed to me on a chilly Friday evening outside a little taco place we loved, with my hand still smelling like salsa verde, and his voice shaking just enough that I knew the moment was real. We did not want a huge wedding. We wanted good food, music people could actually dance to, and no ice sculpture shaped like our initials. We talked about a small ceremony, a rented hall, Costco sheet cake as a joke that slowly became a serious option, and maybe a short honeymoon somewhere warm enough that I could forget Ohio existed for 4 days. For the first time in my adult life, I was saving money for something that was mine. That sounds dramatic, but my family had a way of making my money feel communal and my needs feel optional. My parents, Linda and Rick, lived in the same split-level house I grew up in about 40 minutes outside Columbus. It had a 2-car garage, a faded basketball hoop in the driveway, family photos lining the stairwell, and a dining room that only got used for holidays or intense arguments. My mom loved saying we were a close family, usually right before asking me to do something no one else wanted to do. My dad called himself easygoing, which mostly meant he avoided conflict until someone else had already paid the price for it. My younger sister, Tessa, was 26 and had always been the soft spot in the house. She was pretty in a bright, polished way, with glossy hair and the ability to cry without her mascara moving. Growing up, she was considered sensitive. She needed dance lessons because she needed confidence. She needed the newer car because she got nervous driving. She needed help with rent because her manager was difficult, or her roommate was mean, or she was in a transition season. I needed to understand. That was the phrase of my childhood. Madison, you understand. Madison, be the bigger person. Madison, Tessa's going through a lot. When there was money for one activity, Tessa got dance lessons and I was told I was mature enough to entertain myself. When I got my first job at a frozen yogurt shop in high school, my parents started asking for $20 here, $40 there. It was always temporary, always with a forehead kiss from my mom and a "you're such a good daughter." As an adult, the amounts grew up with me. There was the winter utility bill that had to be paid by Friday, the mortgage scare that somehow never came with paperwork, the credit card minimum that my dad said would snowball into a nightmare if I did not cover it, the car repair my mom called me about while I was standing in Target holding a basket with shampoo, off-brand cereal, and a birthday card for Tessa that cost $7. Every urgent situation had a deadline, and somehow that deadline was always before my next paycheck cleared. I told myself they were struggling. They were not flashy people. Their house was comfortable but not fancy. My dad worked in sales for a building supply company. My mom did part-time administrative work at a dental office and talked like she was personally holding the American middle class together with coupons and casseroles. So when they asked, I helped. I paid a utility bill and skipped a weekend trip. I sent money for property taxes and worked overtime. I covered a temporary shortfall and moved my savings goal back 2 months. I was proud of being dependable until I realized dependable is a nice word people use when they have found a boundary they can easily cross. Tessa never seemed to cross those boundaries. My parents said she was still finding herself. She changed jobs the way some people changed nail polish. She worked the front desk at a salon, then customer service from home, then something in marketing that lasted 6 weeks. Every time she quit, my mom explained it like Tessa had survived a natural disaster. "She's fragile right now," Mom would say. I would look at my bank app and think, apparently I am made of reinforced steel. When Graham and I got engaged, I did not call my parents first. I called my best friend, Harper. Then I called them from the car while Graham drove us home, keeping his eyes on the road but glancing over at me with this soft, hopeful smile. My mom yelled loud enough that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "My baby's getting married," she cried out. For about 10 seconds I let myself believe she meant me. Dad got on the phone and said, "Well, look at that. Somebody finally locked you down." Tessa texted the family group chat 5 minutes later. Tessa. OMG, finally. I call bridesmaid but not ugly dress duty face with tears of joy. Mom. Both my girls will be brides one day. My heart can't take it, red heart. Dad. Better start saving, everybody. At the time I thought that was just Dad being Dad. Graham and I opened a separate savings account for the wedding. We each put money in from every paycheck. Then my mother called me on a Tuesday morning at 7:12. I know the exact time because I was packing a turkey sandwich into my lunch bag and trying to remember if I had paid my renter's insurance. My phone buzzed against the counter. Mom's name showed up. I felt that familiar pinch in my stomach before I even answered. Mom! She was crying. Not sniffling. She was crying in that shaky, breathless way that makes your body react before your brain catches up. Maddie, I'm sorry. I didn't know who else to call. I set down the sandwich. What happened? It's your father and me. There's an old debt. We thought it was handled, but now they are threatening legal action. They are saying if we don't make a payment immediately, it could go to court. Your father is beside himself. In the background, I heard my dad say something muffled, followed by a cabinet door closing. How much? I asked because that was my role. I skipped all the other questions and went straight to the number. Mom took a trembling breath. 8,000. The kitchen went silent except for the radiator hissing like it had an opinion. $8,000? I know it's terrible. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't a serious situation. Mom, I don't just have $8,000 sitting around. But you have the wedding account, she said. There it was. I leaned back against the counter. That's for my wedding. I understand that, honey, but this is our home, our credit, our reputation. I never thought my daughter would let us face legal trouble over a party. My throat tightened. That's not fair. I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for your father. You know his blood pressure. He barely slept. Dad's voice came on then, quieter and heavier. Maddie, we'll pay you back after tax season. Promise. Your mother is just scared. When exactly after tax season? I asked. A pause. We'll figure it out, he said. I had heard that sentence my whole life. It meant I would figure it out. I told them I needed to talk to Graham. Mom went quiet in a way that felt worse than crying. Of course, she said. Ask permission. It is our wedding money. It is your family. I hung up and stood in my tiny kitchen, staring at my lunch bag like it belonged to someone else. When I told Graham that night, he did not raise his voice. That made it worse. He sat at our little two-person table, elbows on his knees, and listened while I repeated my mother's version of the emergency. When I finished, he said, "Do you have any paperwork?" My mom was crying. That's not paperwork. I looked away. They wouldn't lie about a lawsuit. Graham was quiet for a moment. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm asking what this is costing you. Our wedding might be smaller. No, he said gently. What is it costing you? I hated that he sounded reasonable because reasonable felt like a betrayal to my family. They are my parents, I said. I know. They are scared. I know. You think I should just let them face court? I think they should show you the notice. I cried then, partly because he was right and partly because being right did not make anything easier. The next morning I transferred the money. I moved $8,000 from our wedding savings into my parents' checking account with the memo debt help. I stared at the confirmation screen until the numbers blurred. Mom sent a text 15 minutes later. Mom, I knew we could count on you. We love you so much. Red heart. Dad, thanks kiddo. We'll make it right. Tessa did not say anything because as far as I knew, Tessa did not know. 3 weeks later, Tessa announced her engagement. She did it at Sunday dinner, naturally. My mom had made pot roast, the kind with carrots that turned sweet and soft, and she had set out the good cloth napkins even though it was not a holiday. Tessa showed up 20 minutes late wearing a cream sweater and a smile so wide I knew before she lifted her hand. Derek had proposed. Everyone cheered. Mom cried again, but happy this time. Dad opened a bottle of grocery store champagne that had probably been in the fridge since New Year's. Graham hugged Derek. I hugged Tessa and told her I was happy for her because I was in the simple human part of me that still loved my sister. Then Tessa said, "We already found the venue." I blinked. "Already?" She beamed. Derek's mom knew someone at Brookmere Country Club. There was a cancellation next fall, so we grabbed it. Brookmere Country Club was not a grab-it kind of place. It was a place with white pillars, valet parking, and chairs that probably cost more to rent than my monthly electric bill. I knew because a coworker had looked there and laughed herself out of the tour after hearing the deposit number. My stomach dropped, but my brain immediately started protecting them. Maybe Derek's family was paying. Maybe Brookmere had a smaller package. Maybe my parents' financial situation had improved. Maybe the world was normal and I was just tired. Mom clasped her hands. "Our baby girl deserves a beautiful day." I smiled so hard my jaw hurt. After that, the requests started coming faster. Mom called about property taxes. Dad texted about a cash flow timing issue. Tessa asked if I knew anyone who could do bridal shower decorations on a budget, which turned into Mom asking if I could just cover the deposit and they would settle up later. The family group chat became a place where guilt arrived with emojis. "Mom, Maddie, can you send the $600 today? The shower place needs the deposit by 5. Me, I already sent money this month. Tessa, it's not for me, it's for the event. Please don't stress Mom out. Dad will talk Sunday. Don't make decisions when you're upset." I stared at that last message for a long time. I was not upset until he told me not to be. Graham saw me looking at my phone and said, "What now?" I handed it to him. He read the messages without changing his expression. "Where is all this wedding money coming from?" he asked. "Derek's family, maybe." "All of it." "I don't know. Your parents were one missed payment away from court last month." "I know. And now they are helping with a country club wedding?" I pulled my phone back. "You're making it sound like they took my money and gave it to Tessa." He did not answer quickly enough. I snapped, "They wouldn't do that." "I hope not." I disliked him a little for saying it that way. Not because it was cruel, but because it left room for the truth. The first real crack came at another Sunday dinner. By then, Tessa's wedding planning had taken over the house. There were bridal magazines on the coffee table, invitation samples in the kitchen, and a binder on the dining room sideboard with tabs labeled venue, florals, catering, dress, photography. Tessa carried it around like she was coordinating a royal event instead of a wedding in suburban Ohio. Mom had her iPad propped near the fruit bowl while she checked something with the caterer. I was helping clear plates when the screen lit up with a payment confirmation. I was not snooping. It was right there, bright as a billboard. Brookmere Events. Payment received. Amount: $7,850. Memo: reception hold. The amount was not exactly $8,000, but it was close enough to make my fork feel heavy in my hand. Mom came back into the kitchen and saw me looking. Her face changed for half a second. Then she snatched up the iPad and locked it. "What's Brookmere's deposit?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Tessa, sitting at the table with a glass of wine, looked down at her plate. Mom's mouth tightened. "Why?" I was just curious. Graham and I looked at a few venues, and deposits were all over the place. "You're not looking at Brookmere." "I know that." "Then why are you asking?" The room went still. Dad suddenly became fascinated by the butter dish. I shrugged. "No reason." Mom's voice sharpened. "Why are you always looking for a problem, Madison?" There it was again. My full name as a warning. "I'm not. Tessa is happy. Can you just let her be happy?" Tessa whispered. "Mom." Dad stood and started stacking plates badly, clattering them together. "Anybody want coffee?" No one wanted coffee. I went home with my heart beating too fast and my thoughts moving in circles. I kept telling myself there were explanations. The payment could have come from Derek's mom. The timing could be ugly but innocent. Mom could have overreacted because she was stressed. 2 days later, My bank sent me an email reminding me to review linked external accounts. It was the kind of boring security email I usually deleted. This time I opened it. Years earlier, when my parents refinanced their house, I had helped them move money between accounts because my dad could not figure out online banking, and my mom said the lender needed documentation quickly. For a while, one of their checking accounts had been linked in my bank profile for transfers. I thought we had removed it. Apparently, I still had limited view access to one old shared external connection. I was not hacking anything. I was opening a door they forgot they had left unlocked. My hands were cold as I logged in. First I saw normal things. Grocery charges, gas, a Costco renewal, my dad's paycheck deposit, my mom's dental office paycheck. Then I saw transfers to an account nicknamed TW Wedding Reserve. TW. Tessa Willow. My sister did not need a last name in this story, but she did have a middle name my mom loved writing in curly script on birthday cards. I clicked into the transaction history. My $8,000 transfer landed in my parents' account on a Wednesday. 2 days later, $8,000 moved into TW Wedding Reserve. The next Monday, $7,850 went to Brookmere Events with the memo, Tessa reception hold. I did not cry right away. I got very still. It was the kind of still where the room seems to pull back from you. My laptop screen glowed on the table, polite and merciless. I ordered the available statements as PDFs. Then I went back further. The $1,200 I sent in March for a property tax shortage moved 3 days later to a florist retainer. The $950 I sent in April when Dad said the water heater was about to break moved to a photographer installment. The $600 shower deposit Mom had asked for matched a payment to a brunch venue with gold chairs and a mimosa package. Not all of my money went to the wedding. Some did go toward normal bills. That almost made it worse. They had just enough truth mixed in to make the deception easier to swallow. I found an old email from Mom with the name of the debt collection office. I did not expect them to tell me much, and they did not. I was not on the account. But when I explained I had been told there was an immediate legal deadline, and asked if they could confirm the general account status by providing the reference number from a letter my mother had forwarded months earlier, the woman on the phone was careful. "I can't discuss details with you," she said. "But I can say this account is on an active payment arrangement. There was no litigation filing date scheduled during the week you're asking about. So no immediate lawsuit?" I asked. I can't characterize it beyond what I said. Active payment arrangement. No scheduled filing date in that time frame. I thanked her, hung up and sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in my hand. So they had not invented the debt. They had used it to manipulate me. My first instinct was to call my mother and express my anger. I even pulled up her contact. My thumb hovered over the button. Then I thought about how she would cry, how Dad would tell me I was making it a bigger deal than it was, how Tessa would say I was ruining her moment, and how somehow I would end up apologizing for the tone I used while asking why they took my money without permission. For once, I did not call my mom to ask why. I already knew why. I called Graham instead. He came over with takeout noodles and did not say he told me so. He sat beside me at the kitchen table while I showed him the statements. His face got harder with every line. When we got to the Brookmere transfer, he leaned back and rubbed both hands over his face. "Madison, I know. They used your wedding money for hers. I know. And they misled you about legal action. I know." He looked at me carefully. "What do you want to do?" That question made me cry because it was so different from what my family always asked, which was some version of, "What are you going to do for us?" "I don't know yet," I said. "But I don't want to be talked out of being angry." "Then don't give them the chance." So I did not. For the next 2 weeks, I became the person my parents had always bragged about when they needed something handled. Organized. Patient. Thorough. I downloaded statements, took screenshots, saved Venmo requests, exported text messages, and made a timeline in a spreadsheet so clean it could have gotten a job offer. Graham helped me match dates and amounts. He never took over. He just sat beside me, read things twice, and asked questions I had not thought of. What was this $450? Mom said their insurance premium jumped. It moved to a caterer tasting fee 2 days later. Of course it did. I opened a new account at a different bank and moved my direct deposit. I changed every password that mattered. I removed old transfer permissions. I froze my credit through the major bureaus, which felt dramatic until I realized dramatic was giving people access to my life just because they shared my DNA. I checked my credit reports. No new accounts, thank goodness. I pulled together every documented transfer from the last 18 months. The total made me nauseous. Some of it was legitimate help. Some of it was probably mixed. But enough of it was clearly redirected to Tessa's wedding that I stopped seeing isolated emergencies and started seeing a clear system of financial manipulation. During those 2 weeks, I still got messages. Mom, can you come early Sunday? Need help with place cards. Tessa, dress fitting Saturday. You're coming, right? Dad, your mom says you've been quiet. Everything okay? I answered politely and vaguely. Me busy week. I'll see you Sunday. It was the most powerful sentence I had ever sent because it gave them nothing to grab onto. The dinner was supposed to be about finalizing wedding payment details. That was how Mom described it. Derek's mother, Marcy, would be there along with Derek, Tessa, Graham, my parents, and me. Marcy was blunt in the way Midwestern women get when they have raised sons, managed budgets, and lost patience with nonsense sometime around 1998. I liked her. Mom did not. Marcy had already been suspicious because, according to something Derek let slip, Mom kept asking vendors to split payments in strange ways. A little from this account, a little from that one. Checks instead of cards. Deposits under different names. Mom said it was because she was old school. I was starting to understand that old school meant harder to track. That Sunday Graham drove. I sat in the passenger seat with a folder on my lap and my stomach tight enough to hurt. You don't have to do this tonight, he said. I do. Okay. If I try to do it privately, she'll turn it into something else. I know. She'll say I misunderstood. She'll cry. Dad will tell me to calm down. Tessa will make it about her anxiety. Graham nodded once. Then we keep it simple. I looked over. You're doing the talking. I'm making sure no one takes your papers. I laughed once, short and nervous. That sounds ridiculous. He reached into the back seat and lifted a second folder. It was full. What is that? I asked. Copies. I stared at him. He shrugged. Your mom tends to grab things. That was the moment I knew I was marrying the right person. Not because he wanted to fight my family, but because he had paid attention. My parents' house looked the same as always from the outside. The basketball hoop was leaning slightly. The porch light was on. Mom's seasonal wreath was on the door, this one with fake lemons even though it was September. Inside, it smelled like roast chicken, garlic rolls, and the vanilla candle Mom lit whenever company came over. The table was set with the good plates. Cloth napkins. Water glasses. A centerpiece of grocery store flowers arranged like they were trying to pass for professionally humble. My mother set the table like manners could hide their financial deception. Tessa wore a pale blue dress and kept touching her engagement ring. Derek looked tired but friendly. Marcy arrived with a bottle of wine and a face that said she had already noticed 3 things she did not like. Dinner was painfully polite. People passed rolls. Dad asked Graham about work. Derek talked about a new project at his job. Tessa complained about the stress of choosing between 2 shades of dusty rose for napkins. It sounds silly, she said, laughing, but the wrong undertone could ruin the whole table. I looked at my plate. Graham's knee touched mine under the table. It was not a warning. It was an anchor. After dinner, Mom brought out coffee and a store-bought cheesecake she had moved onto a glass cake stand to make it look homemade. Then she stood up with her wine glass. I just want to say something, she began. Dad smiled like he had heard a rehearsal. Mom turned toward Tessa. Some families show love by showing up. We show it by sacrificing. Your father and I are so proud to give our baby girl the wedding she deserves. Tessa's eyes filled with tears. Derek put an arm around her chair. Mom continued, it hasn't been easy, but family is about doing what needs to be done. Madison has been supportive in her own way too, and we are grateful. In her own way. My face got hot. Mom looked at me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. And when it's Madison and Graham's turn, I know their day will be cute and simple just like them. Tessa laughed softly. It was not mean enough to be obvious, but just enough. Something in me clicked into place. I set my coffee cup down. Mom, I said, before dessert, I just want to confirm something. Dad's eyes moved to me. Mom's smile froze. Confirm what? The $8,000 I sent you in June. That went to the debt, right? The room shifted. It was not visible exactly, but everyone felt it. Forks paused. Derek looked from me to Mom. Marcy leaned back in her chair. Mom gave a small laugh. What an odd thing to bring up right now. It's a simple question. Dad put his napkin on the table. Madison, let's not make this a bigger issue than it is. I did not look at him. Mom. Her cheeks flushed. Of course it did. Of course. Yes. I don't appreciate being interrogated in my own home. I opened the folder. Graham's hand moved, not touching me, just ready. I placed the first statement on the table and turned it so Mom could read it. Then why did the exact amount move into an account called TW Wedding Reserve 2 days later? Silence. Not quiet. Total silence. The kind that presses against your ears. Tessa whispered. What? I placed the second page down. And why did Brookmere Events receive $7,850 from that same reserve account with the memo Tessa reception hold the following Monday? Mom reached for the paper. Fast. Graham slid his hand over it first. Don't, he said. Mom's face twisted. Excuse me. He kept his voice even. We brought copies. Then he opened his folder and took out another stack. For 1 second I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because my mother looked genuinely offended that we had anticipated her actions. Marcy held out her hand. May I see that? I gave her a copy. She put on reading glasses from her purse. Derek leaned toward her, his face pale. Tessa sat completely still, eyes shiny, mouth open. Dad said, Maddie. No, I said. You don't get to say my name like a warning anymore. Mom's voice rose. This is a private family matter. It became everyone's business when you made a toast about sacrifice in front of everyone, while lying about who actually sacrificed. Tessa started crying then. I didn't know it was like that. I looked at her. What did you know? Mom said it was handled. That's not an answer. Tessa wiped under her eyes. She said there was family money. She said not to mention the account to you because you were stressed about your own wedding and might act strangely. Derek pulled his arm back from her chair. Tessa, he said quietly, you told me you put your savings toward the venue. She turned to him, panicked. I was going to. Eventually. Marcy lowered the paper. Eventually is not a funding source. Mom snapped. Marcy, with respect, you don't understand our family. Oh, I am beginning to. Dad rubbed his forehead. Your mother was trying to handle things. I turned to him then. You signed off on the account transfers. His mouth opened then closed. I tapped the statement. Your name is on the authorization line for the move into TW Wedding Reserve. You told me there was a legal emergency. Dad looked down at the table. Rick, Marcy said, sharp as a cracked plate. Was there a lawsuit? Dad exhaled. There was debt. That wasn't the question, I said. He looked exhausted but not ashamed enough. It was on a payment plan. Tessa made a small sound. Mom glared at him. Rick. No, he said, suddenly irritated though somehow still at me. Fine. It was on a plan. But we were stretched thin, and Tessa's wedding deposits were due, and Madison had money sitting there. Money sitting there. My wedding savings. My overtime. Graham's contributions. My delayed plans. All sitting there, apparently waiting for the child they actually wanted to celebrate. Dad kept going, as if speaking calmly enough would make it sound reasonable. We always knew you'd be okay, Maddie. You land on your feet. Tessa doesn't. There it was. The family constitution finally read aloud. I felt something inside me split cleanly. It was not breaking exactly, more like a rope cut after years of holding too much weight. You didn't borrow from me, I said. Borrowing requires asking and telling the truth. You lied, manipulated me, and took money from my future because you decided Tessa's dream mattered more than mine. Mom's eyes hardened. Your sister only gets married once. So was I. You're punishing her for our decisions. I looked at Tessa. Did you know Mom told me the money was for legal debt? Tessa cried harder. I didn't ask where it came from because I didn't want to know. Thank you, I said. She blinked. For what? For finally telling the truth. Derek stood up, pushing his chair back. I need a minute. Tessa grabbed his sleeve. Derek, please. He looked down at her hand. You lied to me about paying for the venue. I was embarrassed. You let me believe your family was contributing honestly. Mom cut in. We are contributing. Madison is part of the family. Marcy's laugh was short and cold. Against her knowledge? Mom's face reddened. This is exactly why I didn't want outsiders involved. Outsiders. Marcy stood up too. You invited me here to discuss payments. So let me be clear. I am not contributing another dollar to this wedding until my son and Tessa have full financial transparency and counseling. And if vendors are being paid with money taken under false pretenses, I want no part of it. Tessa sobbed. You are all ruining my wedding. I looked at her and felt sad but not guilty. That was new. You're right, I said. It was unfair when it was kept quiet too. Mom set her glass down hard. Wine sloshed onto the tablecloth. After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By humiliating us. It was funny how humiliation only mattered once people knew what she had done. I gathered my folder slowly. I am asking for repayment in writing, I said. Every transfer I can document that was redirected to Tessa's wedding. I will send the total. Dad looked alarmed. Now hold on. No. Maddie, we can talk about this privately. Graham spoke before I could. Madison doesn't owe you a private conversation after a public lie. Mom pointed at him. You stay out of this. He is in this, I said. You took from our shared wedding fund. Tessa's voice got small and defensive. You're acting like I personally took it from you. I looked at her for a long moment. No. I am acting like you benefited from this deception, and chose not to ask questions because the answers might inconvenience you. She looked away first. That felt better than shouting would have. Graham and I left before dessert. Mom followed us to the front door crying again, but this time the sound did not hook into me the same way. Madison, don't do this, she said. Don't break this family apart. I turned on the porch, the fake lemon wreath bright beside her shoulder. I didn't break it. I just stopped funding the version where I am useful and invisible. Then I walked to the car. My phone started buzzing before we reached the highway. Mom called. Dad called. Tessa texted 16 times. Tessa, I hope you're happy. Tessa, Derek won't talk to me. Tessa, Mom is crying. Tessa, you could have warned me. That last message made me stare out the window until the passing headlights blurred. You could have warned me. As if I had been warned before they took my savings. I muted the chat. The next week was ugly in a quiet, administrative way. I did not post anything online. I did not call relatives. I did not make a dramatic announcement. I made appointments. A consumer attorney named Paula reviewed my documents. She had silver hair, square glasses, and the deeply comforting energy of a woman who had seen every flavor of family nonsense and no longer blinked. This isn't a clear-cut case in the dramatic sense, she told me. You did transfer money voluntarily. But the written claims about the purpose help. The pattern helps. The account access issue helps. At a minimum, a formal demand letter is appropriate. Small claims court may be an option for some of the documented transfers depending on how we frame them. I'm not trying to cause them severe legal trouble, I said. Paula looked over her glasses. Good. Then don't. Just ask for your money back. That sounded so simple I almost laughed. I was not trying to ruin them. I was just done being quietly drained for them. We sent a formal demand letter with a clear total, attached documentation, and a proposed repayment schedule. It listed the $8,000 transfer, the smaller transfers tied to wedding vendors, and the texts where my mother had represented the money as debt, taxes, or household emergencies. It also required them to confirm in writing that they would not attempt to access any of my accounts and would stop using any old linked banking connections. Mom responded with a voicemail I did not listen to. Graham did, with my permission, while I sat beside him eating cereal for dinner because I had lost the energy to cook. He summarized it gently. She says you're heartless, lawyers are unnecessary. Your sister is devastated, and she can't believe you would put money over family. I took another bite of cereal. Anything about repayment? No. Then no response. Dad emailed 3 days later. Not Mom. Dad. Subject: trying to resolve this. He wrote that they had never meant to hurt me, that things had gotten complicated, that Mom was under pressure, that Tessa's deposits were non-refundable, and that he hoped I could remember all the good they had done for me. All the good. The braces my parents paid for when I was 13. The used Honda they helped me buy at 19, which I paid them back for with interest because Dad said it would teach me responsibility. The college application fees I covered myself. The birthday dinners where I split the bill because Mom forgot her wallet. The Sunday meals that always ended with someone asking if I could spot them until Friday. I replied with one line. Please direct repayment communication to Paula. He called me cold after that. Mom called me cruel. Tessa called me jealous. I saved the messages and did not answer. Derek paused the wedding. That news came from Marcy, who called me one evening while I was folding laundry. I don't want to put you in the middle, she said, which was refreshing because everyone else seemed thrilled to put me there. But I thought you should know Derek has asked Tessa to do premarital financial counseling and postpone vendor payments until everything is transparent. How is Tessa taking it? Marcy sighed. Poorly. I'm sorry. Don't be. Better a hard conversation before a wedding than a bitter separation after one. I liked Marcy even more after that. My parents did not repay everything immediately. They could not or would not or both. But the demand letter changed the shape of the conversation. They could not cry a spreadsheet away. They could not call a bank memo dramatic. They could not tell Paula that family helps family was a valid payment plan. After 2 weeks of stalling, they agreed to a written repayment schedule. Monthly payments. Automatic transfers. No contact required. The first payment arrived on a Friday morning with the memo repayment one. I looked at it for a long time. It did not fix anything, but it proved something important. They had always been capable of paying me back. They just needed consequences stronger than my guilt. Graham and I postponed our wedding by 6 months. Not because we could not afford to get married, but because I did not want to plan from a place of panic and resentment. I did not want every centerpiece to remind me of a bank statement. I did not want to walk down an aisle while mentally calculating what my mother had taken. Instead, one Friday afternoon in February we went to the courthouse. I wore a cream dress I found on sale and shoes I already owned. Graham wore a navy suit and kept checking his pocket like the rings might escape. Harper came as my witness. Graham's brother came as his. Afterward, we ate burgers at a place with sticky menus and fries served in metal baskets. 6 months later, we had the backyard reception we actually wanted at Harper's aunt's house outside Dublin. There were string lights, paper plates sturdy enough not to fold under barbecue, a playlist Graham spent 3 obsessive weeks perfecting, and a Costco cake decorated with flowers from Kroger. People danced barefoot in the grass. Someone's uncle spilled lemonade on the gift table. Harper gave a toast that made me cry without hurting me. My parents were not invited. Neither was Tessa. Before that final decision, I sent one email. Not a speech. Not a debate. An ending. I wrote that I would communicate about repayment only through Paula. I wrote that I would not accept calls, surprise visits, guilt messages through relatives, or emergencies without proper documentation. I wrote that love was not a bill I owed every time they refused to budget. I wrote that I hoped they got honest with themselves someday, but I would no longer pay the price while they avoided doing so. Then I blocked the family group chat, changed my number, and gave the new one only to people who had never treated my peace of mind like an inconvenience. The first Sunday after blocking them felt strange. I woke up expecting my stomach to tighten. Sunday had always been the day of dinners, requests, tension, and smiling through little emotional cuts. My phone stayed silent on the nightstand. No crisis. No mom asking if I could come early. No dad telling me not to be upset. No Tessa needing something just this once. Graham was in the kitchen making pancakes badly. He always flipped them too early, so they folded in the middle like tired blankets. The radiator hissed. The apartment smelled like coffee and butter. Sunlight came through the blinds in pale stripes across the beige carpet. I sat at the little table and watched him ruin another pancake. "You're supposed to wait for bubbles," I said. He glanced over his shoulder. "I'm an artist." "You're a menace." He slid the ugly pancake onto a plate and set it in front of me with exaggerated pride. For the first time in years, Sunday felt like a day instead of a warning. Peace did not feel natural right away. It felt suspicious, like I had forgotten an appointment or missed a bill. I kept checking my phone even though there was nothing to check. I kept waiting for guilt to walk through the door and sit down at my table. But nothing came. So I ate the pancake. It was lopsided, a little underdone in the middle, and better than any family dinner I could remember. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.